دخلت اصلا جوين.
ما هو عندك
انت لو دخلت وانت داخل جوين
هو هنا مش عايز تعمل على الكاميرا.
احنا كلنا داخل علشان هنا على الكاميرا هتيجي.
لا
ايه
هو اللي الكاميرا
ايه
لا الكاميرا انا كنت ايوه لا مش البراون ويت you can use the presentation here if you want. And
I would rather do it from the back, but if that's not going to work, and we could,
what you want to, we can do it from here.
Okay. Right, I'll do it from here.
And use it, share it on Microsoft also. And do it okay. There's a fix.
That's the presentation.
Really stick in man. You use the stick there? Okay. She will get it. Okay. I will send here the screen.
Great.
Okay. I just use the side event, the number of the room, and I will send here. It will be the very version.
Thank you.
بصي ممكن شنطتي فيها جواها شنطه سوداء اللي هي شنطه الايد دي عشان احط بيها سايد ايفنت ايد دي هاتيها بس. شفت اللي جواها لو سمحت.
Can I see the things that I just want to make sure that they're... Do I need this one, open slide, PowerPoint?
Okay.
And I need this the video file. Sorry? First, I need to show a slide.
Okay. I will adjust. Okay. But I send it. If you want, we can and be on the screen. Okay. And we can send it again and return back to get the video.
انت كده هتفتحهم جوه التيم؟ لا هي عايزاهم تبقى جوه التيم نعملهم
شير سكرين يعني بس ايوه
كده احنا هنفضل واقفين مع اللابتوب ده.
المدروم دي ايه؟
هذه بنت من ثواني هولعها من هنا. He brought the water.
In the front row are speaking.
we will start the video.
كويس.
Give slide.
طيب أخش جوه من شير سكرين.
Time this view. And you need holding slides
Holding
first.
slides first. Right, and then into that slide, then somebody is going to speak.
Okay.
نبقى مركزة.
This is on. I'm going to advance to the next slide. Somebody else is going to come up and speak. We have the video.
Yeah. Then is it after read the video?
Okay.
ده
No,
الاختبار.
be ready after Okay, after. After this.
Okay, great.
واحد اشتغل. كده اعمل لها شير صح؟
لا لسه عن شيء.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So can we just make sure that...
This is the video. This is the video.
Yeah, I know, but I want to make sure that it's at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, the video is not loading, so...
No. Okay. Just you start one click.
1 second.
Okay.
Okay. Great. All right, so we need to start.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You want to
Hashtagal
share
laptop?
this screen? You want to share?
Right.
Not here.
Okay.
I will share this. So on your team, if you anybody on the team, you can check.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and start.
اشتغل عشان مش فاهم. اشتغل على هنا.
خلاص هي شغالة.
هي اللي شغالة خلاص.
Thank you so much. Charlotte.
Hello? Is that on? Is the mic working? The mic's not working. Fantastic. Press the button. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Alex Halliday, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to Columbia University's UNFCCC side event for 2022, Putting Food on the Table During a Climate Crisis. Today you'll hear from an impressive group of experts on some critical topics facing food systems in a changing climate. Their job is to say things that are interesting, important, and preferably both. So no pressure there, but that's what we're looking for. We'd like to thank the World Food Prize Foundation, MIT, the FACT Alliance, Oxford University, CATIE, IICA, Clim-Eat, the Gates Foundation, the Agricultural Model Intercomparison and Improvement Project, we all know as AgMIP, and United Arab Emirates for partnering or participating in this event. Columbia University is also particularly proud to highlight the participation of Cynthia Rosenzweig, this year's World Food Prize winner, and we'll be hearing from her later. Cynthia received her award for her seminal contributions to understanding and predicting the impacts of the interaction between climate and food systems. She is a senior research scientist at the Columbia Climate School, head of the Climate Impacts Group at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and she leads the AgMIP project. Food security is increasingly imperiled by the impacts of the climate crisis. At the same time, the food system is an important driver of climate change. There is a growing momentum for tangible action and commitments to transform our food systems to be more healthy, more sustainable, as well as resilient to climate and geopolitical shocks. The Climate School was created about a year ago to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and to educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. We've established food systems as one critical area to focus our scholarship and research. It is key to our mission to look beyond academics and ensure that our research is translated into evidence-based analysis and advice to inform decision and policymakers. The Climate School's Healthy and Sustainable Food Systems Network supports fresh approaches to interdisciplinary research on healthy and sustainable food systems. It brings together people from a variety of parts of Columbia University, including the IRI and NASA GIS, and considers these issues at the nexus of food systems and the climate crisis. That group's review that it's completed, Transitioning Animal Protein-Based Food Systems to Ensure Healthy and Sustainable Diets, has some incredibly useful takeaways in a range of areas, including the role of governments and other stakeholder engagement. These discussions focus precisely what the Columbia Climate School aims to do and help us fulfill our mission to have real impact in the most pressing changes and challenges around climate. This session will discuss this changing role of science, articulate a clear vision for action research, and identify research priorities for putting food on the table during the climate crisis. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers and participants, as well as everyone in attendance. We know this is a busy time for everyone, as well as a noisy time, and we appreciate you taking the time to participate in this important discussion. Well, warm welcome to you all. And now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce Purvi Mehta, Deputy Director for Global Growth and Opportunity at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Thank you very much, Alex, and really good to be here and to be heard in this kind of a noisy environment. So thank you, thank you. I think this talk is very interesting and very important from several perspectives. But one, of course, is the focus for the first time. So much focus on adaptation, very, very important. So much focus on action, very important. But one very interesting thing about this talk is the way it links to the topic of this panel, which is on food. The last talk, which also was during food crisis in some sense, because it was after or during the COVID disruption, there were 8 heads of state who brought in food price, food affordability in their speeches and in their priorities that they mentioned. This COP, there have been 41 countries which have already raised food prices and food availability as one of their top priorities. It just shows the interconnectedness, interdependence of climate, food availability, food accessibility, and food affordability. And so I think this is a very, very interesting COP from that perspective, and thank you for having this panel which actually focuses on that. I was asked to highlight some of the key challenges and opportunities, and basically list them out so that the panelists after that can elaborate upon that. In terms of challenges, I want to highlight two at the moment, right? One is the challenges around productivity. I think, we still have a huge struggle, especially in developing countries, in terms of the actual productivity and the challenge
انت دخلت ده ايوه قلت انا قلت دخلت بس هي الفكره ان ده مختلف عن ده فخلاص كده يبقى انا ايه كده تمام
يعني عندنا مشكله ايه يا صنفي اللي بتعمل
Is it Cynthia Rosenzweig? You want me to start? Yeah? Okay, I start with a good note that we did make a lot of progress in terms of productivity between 1961 and 2015. The productivity in the world has actually doubled. So very, very big progress, very important acknowledged progress. But if it wasn't for abiotic and biotic stresses, if it wasn't for climate-related factors, that would have been 18% higher, which means almost about 7 years of genetic gain efforts. So if climate does act as the strongest headwind against our work or our efforts as a world on productivity and the quantity of food. But the second angle I wanted to bring, and I was sitting next to Jim and he gave me a new word called systemic resilience. So I'm going to, the second big challenge I want to bring is the profitability and income of the farmer. Climate, as we know, will push or swell the global poverty by 130 million people more by 2030. It's a major issue, but what is very important from an agriculture perspective is most of these people who will fall under poverty are going to be from developing countries, and ironically, most of these people in developing countries who will get into poverty also happen to be people who are dependent on agriculture as an important or only source of their livelihood. So farmers' income and productivity increase by default does not translate into higher income of the farmer. And income is an important factor not only from a socio-economic perspective. I don't want to, we know but income is a very, very important factor also from an adaptation perspective, because that brings it's the biggest factor. Income also is perhaps the most important resilient factor for the farmer's ability or the people's ability to have adaptation capacity. It is also very important for the technology developers in this room. It is also a very, very important factor for people's ability to afford and access and adopt to those technologies. I mean, we know from some of the studies, for example, that 20% higher income resulted in 17% higher uptake of abiotic stress tolerant technologies like better seeds and irrigation in the farms and so forth. So the two major challenges or two clusters of challenges I wanted to put into, one is productivity and second is profitability from farming, right? In terms of the opportunities, I think of course there are many, right? The problem always brings in a lot of opportunities. But here are certain things that I'd like to really highlight that the panel can later talk about. One of the big opportunities in terms of the climate area in agriculture is diversification. A large number of, so for example, in the world, the global agriculture effort, if one sees, 69% of the world's finances and money in agriculture goes to 11 agriculture commodities, which is the usual rice, wheat, maize, cotton, soybean, that sort of. And so there is a huge opportunity in terms of the diversified commodity, because diversification also acts as a very important climate adaptation, climate resilience mechanism and risk management mechanism for agriculture. So a lot that needs to be done there. And say, for example, it is not just about the crops, it is also about the livestock and the mixed farming system in developing countries, right? For example, 83% of India's milk does not come from livestock farmers. It comes from crop farmers who also happen to keep a livestock in their farms. So there is such an integrated system, and therefore the adaptation strategy, the risk mitigation strategy has also to be from that kind of an integrated lens. The second point I wanted to bring is on nutrition, which is also linked to the whole diversification lens. And Alex, I know there is a lot of work that's going on at Columbia also on looking at the nutrition levels, right? We do have a lot of data on how productivity gets affected. 1 degree centigrade higher temperature results into, say, for example, 2.3% reduction in rice production, 7% or more reduction in maize production and all that. But the depletion among those staple crops of, say, for example, and especially wheat and zinc is really very. So I want to sort of coin the word depletion resilience as one of the very important traits in agriculture, which is going to be very important. And the third point, because I know the FACT Alliance is working a lot, and I know Cynthia is a master of that, I want to really emphasize data and innovation for adaptation. And this is very, very important from many perspectives, but especially also in terms of having policies to make informed decisions. Today, if you see, we complain about the big gap within what is needed in climate finance and what is available, right? Africa, for example, there is, if they want to fulfill their NDCs by 2030, the requirement of climate finance is about $2.8 trillion, which is close to about $277 billion a year. That is what Africa requires. And the current finance is at about $29 billion, which is the last year's data, right? So there is that. But among the money that's available, the finance that's available also, within the context of Africa, for example, 10 countries in Africa absorb about 60% of that total finance that's available. How do you create absorption capacity? How do you create those investable evidences? There's where I think data would come it's a very, very important factor, and therefore I think huge opportunity in terms of innovation, not just in terms of abiotic stresses, biotic stresses, to give an example of livestock, thermostable vaccine, those kind of things, but innovations also in predicting the problem, but at the same time giving a concrete cost of what it takes to address the problem. So in a nutshell, I just wanted to, looking at such large number of organizations coming together to hold this session, I wanted to remind us of two words: economy of scope, where organizations, countries, sectors, crop, livestock, aqua come together. So economy of scope and economy of scale. I think that's going to be very, very crucial as we look at how we are going to put food on our tables, make it more accessible and affordable across the world. Thank you very much.
Ready to go.
Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me well? It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, although she's already been introduced substantially. Dr. Cynthia Rosenzweig wanted to be here with us, was unable to, so she has prepared a video for us. I am introducing Dr. Rosenzweig because she was the 2022 World Food Prize winner this year, just awarded in October in Des Moines, Iowa, for her seminal work in modeling and integration of models, and she has a long and substantial history. She is a senior research scientist, as you already heard, with NASA Goddard Institute of Space Studies, and she leads the climate impact group there. She's also co-chair in New York City of many substantial operations and has served on both the fourth assessment report for the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change and other slides.
Very good. Given. Is it? good review and the
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me? Thank you so much for your forbearance with regard to the recording. I'm sure many of you could not hear. This is being live recorded, so you can view if you'd like to afterwards. Again, my name is Barbara Stinson, and I'm pleased to now welcome an esteemed panel to talk further with us today about getting food on the table in a time of crisis. I'm going to start with introductions of each of our panel members, and then we'll have just a few remarks from each one of them, and then an opportunity for questions from the audience. We're hoping to reserve some time before 1 o'clock for you all to pose questions as well. First, I'm going to introduce Greg Sixt. Greg is Director of Food and Climate Systems Transformation, the Alliance at MIT, FACT Alliance. And he works at MIT in a global network of leading research institutions and stakeholder organizations who are working to shorten the link between research and action. And that's really the theme of our many of our panelists' comments today, is shrinking that space between research and action. Next, we'll have Muhammed Ibrahim will speak, and Muhammed is Director General of CATIE, and CATIE is conducting, he served as a technical operation leader for their flagship program and project, Resilience and Comprehensive Risk Management in Agriculture. He serves as Director General and also on a number of other esteemed panels. Next is Leanne Zeppenfeldt. Leanne is with Clim-Eat, which is a relatively new organization playing a major role in the organization of this talk, and she serves as the Knowledge and Partnerships Officer and Leader. Next, Manuel Otero will speak, and Manuel is the Director General of IICA, and has been serving in that role, I think, since 2017. IICA is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, and has been served through 2022, and has a host of a major pavilion here at COP27. Our final speaker will be Jim Hall. Dr. Hall is Professor of Climate and Environmental Risk at Oxford University. Jim serves as Director of Research in the School of Geography and the Environment, with many other esteemed positions prior to that. We'll also have quick closing remarks from our UAE representative of COP28. So that is our plan for proceeding this afternoon. So beginning with you, Greg, let's talk a little bit about, building on the wonderful opening comments, more about the efforts for research to try to address broad stakeholder needs and to be able to build those stronger linkages between policymaking and investment development programs in order to deliver on these actionable results that we're all discussing. Right.
Sure, thank you. I want to build off what Purvi and Cynthia said in the importance of building networks and networks and networks. One of the key things that I think has kind of come to the realization of is that the research community can play a central role in informing and guiding and giving the science needed for food system transformations. But to date, the big broad brush here. Better? Yeah, here we are. No, again. This is where I just need to be closer. Can everyone hear me? Okay, all right, I'm closer now. So to date, the research community has tended to function in food systems in disciplinary silos without really connecting our processes to get a better systems perspective. Food systems solutions need to have this systems perspective, really understanding how the different pieces interact. The research community has also tended to engage stakeholders. We're impacted by research later in the research process, not at the beginning. So we formulate our ideas and then we reach out to stakeholders. There's a real need to engage stakeholders from the beginning, the ideation and project conceptualization phase. And the last part is oftentimes when, especially the academic research community produces research, the peer review process is fundamentally important. I mean, that's how science is verified. But there's a disconnect between that and getting that information in the hands of the end users and people being impacted by the recommendations. So what we've done with MIT Jameel Water Food Systems Lab as the lead is we've built food and climate systems transformation lines, or FACT Alliance. It's a global network of over 20 research institutions. Some of them are on the stage. We've got Columbia, both the Climate School and the Public Health School, Clim-Eat, Oxford, AgMIP are all members. And we've developed an approach to research that one uses, it's important to kind of get that scientific basis for the conversation in place. So we use modeling approaches for assessing kind of vulnerabilities of a food system focus area. It depends on kind of where you're working. It could be at a national level, it could be at a subnational level, it could be to guide investment or to guide policies. And then engaging stakeholders with that as a baseline for conversation to identify where the systemic barriers and opportunities for change are. Who should be at the table of the research process? Getting a sense of the values and the needs of the stakeholders to really guide where and identify where the knowledge gaps are and kind of what disciplines you need to bring engage to do that. And then proceeding with that transdisciplinary research for action. And then finally, kind of one of the big knowledge gaps we actually have to address is how do you evaluate and how do you assess transformation in complex systems, which is food and climate systems are both individually complex and the relationship of them together is extremely complex. So that's actually an area we hope to address, and that the research community and the research community in conjunction with stakeholders needs to figure out how to answer those. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Fabulously. Thank you so much. And absolutely crucial to begin to know that there's processes that are going on now to better assess the transformation that we're all talking about and striving for. Muhammed Ibrahim, please. We'll turn to you next. Just a second. We'll turn to you next. And I know you want to talk more about how science responds to local needs, and CATIE has many activities and projects that are headed in this direction, forging the necessary partnerships between all stakeholders, which is always a challenge. Muhammed.
Thank you. Well, CATIE has a unique model for institutional model which integrates higher education with systemic research as well as outreach to have impacts in what we are doing. So we are building capacities. We see a need for improving capacities of the local scale as well as national level to respond to research needs and development. But also in integrating science into decision-making processes through research actions embedded in field project development and close involvement of postgraduate students from the region. I think sustainability of food systems largely depends on reconciling the biodiversity and ecosystem services management with the needs of rural livelihoods to respond to the impacts of the climate crisis. One of the things I would like to add what Dr. Purvi mentioned about in terms of the productivity gaps. I also think we need to look at the food waste and post-harvest losses, which is more than 30 to 40% in some cases. So we need to address those issues also in terms of looking at sustainable food systems. The research at CATIE is derived from the on-ground implementation of development and climate actions to ensure legitimacy of research outputs and strengthening its contribution to science-driven support, the policy processes and capacity building of decision makers across the region. For example, several initiatives during local field implementation of action support upstream processes like the Nama livestock, the Nama coffee, responding to the NDCs where CATIE is generating knowledge at a pilot scale but being scaled up through looking at the policy making processes. We work in Costa Rica, and Costa Rica is one of the countries that's been championing the implementation of NAMA's livestock or the NAMA activities in bananas, whatever, but also looking from a productivity and a sustainability point of view. We are also looking at scalable responses. How do you look at institutional anchoring with the local partners as well as partners regionally in the CGIAR as well as partners that we work in to develop the science and research that we work in. Understanding the local context for a bottom-up integration into decision making and to enable impacts of climate finance, for example. Multi and transdisciplinary research is very important. It's key to address the complexity of food systems and for adaptation and transition into responses facing the climate crisis. So I think, in general, how do we move from the research into mainstreaming is a challenge. And mainstreaming responses addressing a highly heterogeneous and complex demand across livelihoods for sustainable food systems is a challenge in a fragmented policy environment that we're working on. And I think that's the context that we need to look at how the political conditions are different, but also the institutional frameworks that we work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammed. Next, Leanne Zeppenfeldt will speak to us a bit more from her perspective, from Clim-Eat's perspective, on what some of the missing current research is for innovating food systems, and in particular, getting to this delivery of action, which we're all striving for. And in particular, there's bottlenecks and huge bottlenecks for engaging our youth and young leaders, and of course they are the ones with the appetite and the pressure for action. Leanne?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me also, and hi everyone. So just for context, I work at Clim-Eat. Not everyone may know us, but we're a new think and do tank on food and climate. We started in January, so actually we relaunched our company Sixt yesterday at our birthday party. So we're kind of a new kid on the block. But I mean, it's been an exciting year, and this last year I've been working together with the UK government on the company Sixt follow-up on the agricultural breakthrough, specifically agriculture breakthrough, and about a month ago the breakthrough report was launched, which kind of looked at 5 sectors, agriculture being one of them. And one of kind of the key recommendations on the agricultural breakthrough was, of course, on R&D and innovation, but specifically on getting this deployment right. And I think that all of the panelists so far also kind of say that the deployment side of research is where a lot of innovation gets stuck. So kind of from my perspective, I see there's kind of 2 issues or kind of lock-ins that we're facing. First one is really about kind of the type of research. We're not paying enough to economic and social political research. That's not paying enough attention to it, not paying enough funding, and just effort to really understanding kind of the processes and the politics behind scaling these innovations and getting them really implemented on the local level. So I would kind of call for, like the transdisciplinary that Greg also mentioned. That's really still also the past few weeks I've been listening to quite a few panels, and still I think the dominant narrative I hear when we're talking about innovation is scaling as some sort of mechanical process that we just need to improve the efficiency of. But it's such a political undertaking to get these innovations actually on the ground. So more attention to that, and I think Purvi also mentioned, like just having the technological innovations to increase production doesn't mean farmers are actually improving their livelihood. So there's also just the people side of that. We need to understand that better to have better informed strategies. And then secondly, on the kind of the organizational, institutional landscape of research and development in agriculture, what I've been seeing as being part of a startup organization is that a lot of the system in terms of innovation that we're relying on is institutions that are over 50 years old. And to me, also as a young person, I kind of miss the logic. We're looking for transformation. We're talking about transformation, I think is the word I've heard the most the past week. But we're relying on kind of old institutions to do that. And I'm not going to deny the work that they've done, of course, but if we're only relying on those kind of institutions to deliver transformation, I mean, yeah, how is that going to happen? So from our experience at Clim-Eat, we're trying to kind of shape that system up a bit. And it's interesting because we're seeing quite a lot of pushback also from bigger, older organizations who, in my opinion, also try to be everything. They're trying to be the innovator, the researcher, the convener, the advocate, the influencer. And as soon as there's a new kid on the block, we see a lot of pushback in terms of kind of political pushback. And then in the other hand, there's also just the practicalities of starting a new organization, procurement processes, bureaucracy. I mean, if we're not careful at Clim-Eat, we're spending 4 days of our week on filling forms and chasing people, right? So I think there is, within the institutional landscape, we need much more innovation, and we also need funders and political leaders to kind of push for that and not kind of stay in the comfortable innovation system that we have, because that alone is not going to deliver the innovation. But also, I want to end on a high note. I mean, as a young researcher, it's also been quite inspiring to see the partners that we did work with, and we are getting that energy from to keep going. That's one of the things I think that Clim-Eat is feeding us the energy to keep going within the system. And I would also kind of invite everyone to kind of get your own energy, no matter the institution that you're in, put that energy into collaboration and the kind of can-do mentality, because we need much, much, much more of that in the innovation system.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for challenging us and putting on the table some of the obstacles that you're facing at the new institution. Next, we're going to proceed to Manuel Otero. Manuel, with his work at the Cooperation Institute, is going to talk more specifically with us about some of the opportunities they are taking advantage of in developing new cooperative systems and transformation.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, the organizers. Let me initially make some contributions to the title of this seminar. My first comment would be that for having foods on the table, we need farmers in the rural areas. And I would like to be emphatic about it. As I said probably yesterday, for having healthy food, we need healthy rural areas. So I try to be coherent with a systemic approach, including farmers, including the rural areas. I understand that consumers are the ones who pull in this chain, defining what to eat, how to eat, when to eat. I understand perfectly. But sometimes we forget the crucial role of the farmers. I would like to emphasize what it has been mentioned about the incomes. And let me tell you one example. One waiter working, for example, in New York, earns 22 more times gets 22 more times than a farmer in Central America. It's not fair. It's not correct. It's something wrong. So we should have to defend the situation of the farmers in rural areas. Otherwise, the vicious circle is going to be perpetuated. What's going on in some countries in Central America, in the Caribbean region, since the farmers do not receive the correct prices, sooner or later they destroy, they don't protect the land. They don't give fair education to the families, and sooner or later they will migrate. So we should have to correct this vicious circle and put in motion a virtuous circle in which higher incomes, more adoption of technologies, better life for people in rural areas. In fact, the quality of life in urban centers heavily depend upon what's going on in the rural areas. The quality of the air we breathe in, the quality of foods. So I would like, in this first intervention, defend the crucial role of farmers. And for doing that, we need long-term policies, pro-farmers, pro-nature, pro-science and innovation. And you know, at least in the Americas, the investment in science and innovation is less than $1 per $100 produced. So we have to correct all this distortion. Lastly, I would like to make a comment regarding IICA. IICA is a promoter of collective actions, and tomorrow we will present the hemispheric consensus reached by the 34 agriculture ministers from US up to the smallest country in the Caribbean or the Central Americas, all together. Because in this scope there is a lot of energy, but sometimes a very fragmented approach, and we have to present a more integrated vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. So we'll look forward to tomorrow, the announcement of the collective action. Thank you so much. Our final speaker, just for our initial comments, is Jim Hall from Oxford University. And Jim's going to talk a little bit more about the kinds of processes that are needed and what he's doing and what Oxford is doing in translating to action with some strong examples.
Thank you, and it's a great pleasure to be here at this side event. Cynthia was absolutely spot on in the way in which she described the food system as a multi-scale system globally, and I'd like you to imagine that as a global network across the globe with nodes of supply and demand within that network, and to think about the variability of those two things. Variability in supply, which is being impacted by spatially variable climate-related shocks, variations in input, then shocks to the food trade system, as we've seen in Ukraine as a consequence of the war there, shocks to the transport system, the ever given ship running aground in the Suez Canal, Hurricane Ike in the Gulf ports, and then the impacts of varying patterns of demand, our frictions in terms of food trade export constraints, and how the market partially but imperfectly mediates all of those interactions. And so our analysis of systemic resilience, both within the PACT Alliance and the Oxford Martin Programme on Systemic Resilience, tries to characterize that system, but then in terms of getting it into practice, looks at what are the interventions in the system which we can do to make it more resilient. That comes on to what extent should we be enhancing domestic production. That's often an attractive rhetoric of food security, but equally important is looking at diversification, looking at how trusted one's trade relationships are, how reliable those relationships are, the role of storage and stocks within the system, and on the demand side, and the role of healthy and sustainable diets. And my colleagues in Oxford have demonstrated how dietary changes ripple through the entire food system. And then in order to get this taken up in practice, to turn to the question, that needs to be articulated in very focused use cases. What does this mean for governments, for businesses, for international organizations in terms of the provision of direct payments to people who are facing food insecurity, pre-arranged insurance mechanisms. The IMF has just this week announced a food shock facility, and we're working with them to understand what might be the probable maximum scale of demand on such a food shock financial window at the IMF. So to kind of generalize that a little bit, I think of this in terms of a theory of change of research into practice, which actually looks ahead to try and anticipate decision makers' needs even before they fully conceptualize them themselves. That's why we have universities, is to have smart people who are looking over the horizon, and to then conceptualize that and to help decision makers understand the problems they're facing, and then devise analysis to help quantify that problem, analyze solutions, and empower people to take that analysis and internalize that analysis. I'll just give you one example from my own research if you have time. I particularly work on water and infrastructure, and in 2012 you may recall that London was facing a drought in the Olympics year. Then in March it started raining torrentially, and your memories of the Olympics may be of a very wet Olympics. But nonetheless, that prospect of London actually having water supply shortages was which made policymakers wake up. That actually went into law surprisingly quickly. 2014, a duty of resilience was passed in our Environment Act. But then policymakers were left with the question, what does this mean, and how do we operationalise this? In my team, we were already building a national water resilience model that was taken on by the Environment Agency. We've handed it over, and they're now analysing upwards of £40 billion of water supply projects from a national perspective for the first time, and they own that analysis. We're hands off now. So the idea of research into practice is anticipating needs, putting into practice that theory of change, and then working in a very agile way because the world changes. The world can't wait for the usual process of research, of 3-year PhDs and research funding applications which are competitive, and as Greg said, going through peer review. We've got to be much more agile in terms of foreseeing needs and responding to needs in an agile way.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, what an amazing series of speakers, really. And just to reflect on a few of the comments so far, and then we're going to ask you all to perhaps respond a bit to each other, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So, thank you to our entire sequence. Purvi Mehta launched us with a real challenge to consider the systemic resilience that's actually needed, and particularly looking at both productivity and profitability. And with a wonderful statement that I think was later reflected by Manuel, income is the most important factor in executing adaptation to climate change. Water income, all kinds of income in order to build technology development, etc. And challenges, all kinds of challenges to diversification that's needed of commodities and the funding for that, as well as looking at where climate resilience investments are going now and how concentrated they are and how they must spread. Greg reflected for us, well, Cynthia, the network of networks, she's the champion of that multi-modeling, that she conducts country-level assessments going on, a result of her work in her network of networks. Greg took us into territory of really understanding the transdisciplinary needs that are going on, how to really assess transformation. Muhammed focused on the fragmentation policy environment and what's needed in productivity and sustainability. And Leanne helpfully challenged us that new institutions need a pathway in to this transformation process. How do we transform science into action if we're only relying on the old players instead of getting beyond traditional participants and the bureaucracies? Manuel, thank you for returning us to the importance of farmer income and how both the prices and higher incomes have got to be beneficial for farmers. And IICA's collective action announcement will be coming forward. And Jim, of course, your global network and the multi-scale work that you do, and particularly recognizing the food shop facility that's coming forward from IMF, but your theory of change and opportunity that we're going to see as a result of that to get us beyond the usual process, which does need to accelerate and be agile. So just a few thoughts there, trying to weave together an incredible array of knowledge that we have here in our panel. So thinking about what you've heard so far from each other and from our initial presentation, any other further comments you all would like to make before we turn over to questions from the audience?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to actually take that concept of transdisciplinary research one step further towards convergence research. So, where we are, better? All right. The key element, the difference between convergence research and transdisciplinary research is convergence research is driven by trying to solve vexing societal challenges, and few challenges are more vexing than the nexus of food systems and climate change. And the other element is really engaging stakeholders at that early ideation phase that I mentioned. I also want to say that I think an important element to us to connecting research to action is open networks. So the Faculty does have a kind of a core network of research institutions, but for example, on the new trade project we're working on with Oxford, IFRI, UAE, and Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research, UAE is not actually a member of the Faculty Alliance, but that open network model is really important for bringing in relevant collaborators. And then the other part of that is being sure that as we develop the research agenda, it really is engaging with the right stakeholders throughout that process and being iterative. We have to be willing to admit when we're wrong or when we need to do a course correction in the middle of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Muhammed, and then
I think I agree with the concept of the theory of change to have the impacts moving from upstream to downstream research. There are good examples where CATIE has been working with the local stakeholders to have impacts and transformation of uptake of the research that we've been doing in the food systems. We have been focusing on agrobiodiversity to diversifying the food. As you mentioned, there are more than only 10 of these commodities which have been funded. But I think if we're going to look at the resilient food systems, we need to look at a more diversified systems, which we have seen countries like Peru advancing in having more diversity in the food systems. One of the things I would like to finalize is that though we are putting emphasis on the income of farmers and increasing the income, we should find ways of internalizing the positive externalities of ecosystem services to provide incentives to the farmers.
We might ask you to say a bit more about that, what exactly you'd suggest. But first, let's go to Jim and then Manuel.
Thank you, Barbara. I would like to underscore the whole issue of science and innovation, emphasizing first of all that there is some underinvestment in this area that requires some reengineering approaches. All the money spent is in and the responsibility of public sector, and should be the result of public and private articulation. Obviously, I am talking in regards of the Americas. The agenda should be reconsidered, putting much more emphasis on bioeconomy, and last but not least, taking into account the importance of local communities, paying much more attention what the farmers are needing, and try to provide concrete technologies that they are required in these circumstances in which uncertainty and this volatile world is putting a lot of challenges.
Jim? No. Greg has another thought for us.
One other thing I wanted to add was that, to drive transformation, for research to have a role in that, and for collaboration to have a role in that, you need to build strong relationships with the stakeholders, and that takes time. That takes longer than kind of the traditional kind of 5-year, maybe 7-year project cycle. So I think one of the things that is really important is that both, all types of funders need to commit to longer-term funding for projects that we're really truly interested in transforming systems. That's about building relationships. It's about cultural change. It's about management style change. It's about also being sure that on the research community side, we aren't viewed as being extractive. Oftentimes we kind of drop in, collect our data, and drop out. And some of the things I've heard and we've heard we've been building this at Lawrence is that research can be extractive. Or you also don't want to get to a situation where you work with the community and co-develop something, and then the funding dries up, and you pull out, and everything falls apart. So it's about having that time commitment to be able to make lasting change.
So we're hearing both the need for accelerating the process itself can't follow the traditional time frame, and the long-term commitment of the funding to really be able to implement over time. Leanne, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so just coming back also to Muhammad about the kind of the internalizing the ecosystem services from farmers. I've also been working together with the rest of the Clim-Eat team on the compensation initiative that's going to be launched by the G7 German presidency. We'll have an event on that later today. So what we're seeing there is also if we're talking also about research priorities, specifically for ecosystem services, the monitoring, kind of reporting and validation technologies, they're just too expensive at this point to kind of really make those systems happen and really compensate farmers and verify that. So I think if we're talking about technological focus areas for innovation, I think that should be a really big one. But I'm also agreeing very much with Greg that really to get those going, building on people and partnerships within these research institutions is so essential, because that's the people you're actually connecting with, and the relationship you're fostering to really, in the end, people are doing the action, right, in implementing research. It's not the institutions. So really those relationships are completely essential for building ground.
Thank you. We're going to turn to all of you now and see if anyone has questions, really for anyone, but particularly for our panel members. We'll start with this gentleman here. You'll probably have to speak up into that microphone. We heard you for a second.
Do you want to come up and sit?
Yes, so thank you very much. My name is Sharif Kaseba from the Climate Resilience Fund. We're a venture capital fund. We work in the African geography as well as the MENA geography. So my suggestion, perhaps more than a question, from personal experiences, we've benefited greatly from research at different levels, universities, organizations, and so forth. But how to move the legacy kind of organizations that you talked a little bit about and accelerate the implementation, I think funds like ourselves who are on the ground in specific geographies very much benefit and can also play a very big role in the implementation and acceleration as well as adaptation to our different geography needs. So I think what I would love is if legacy organizations and big research organizations that play such a vital role, but like you correctly said, a lot of that innovation does not follow a road to commercialization. And that's where we could come in, not meaning my fund, but in general, our structures are a very good way to commercialize. And I've seen, particularly in the Nordics, a lot of that thought process being implemented. So thank you very much.
Who would like to respond to that challenge, that opportunity, accelerating the legacy organizations, processes, in particular geographies, that really invite then that innovative finance and funding?
Yeah, working. Yeah. No, thank you for that comment, and I mean, I completely agree. I think something that we've, at Clim-Eat for next year, also looking at is how do we connect to kind of the local organizations that are already on the ground, or have that network and the people connections in specific localities. But then also looking at the past years, that our experience with like these legacy organizations is that they're kind of afraid to take that leap and go to the kind of more broader partnerships. And I think something like Clim-Eat as an organization can kind of be that bridge, taking that risk. We're not afraid to go. We kind of like failing because we can learn more and get stuff done. So I think they're getting those full partnerships and just taking that leap is really important, and also I think a challenge to these kind of the big guys on the block to take that leap. We need to get that going.
Anyone else on the panel? Muhammed.
I think what Dr. Manuel Otero mentioned about the consortium of the alliances with the private sector, as well as the financial and public sector, will be important to have a more uptake of the research outputs, as we've seen in some examples. But also we need differentiated policies. For example, we have been advocating that a large percentage of the food is coming from family agriculture or family farming, so we need to look at policies that would really target those groups, provide them with incentives to remove the barriers and to become more resilient in the food systems.
I just wanted to respond to that and say that part of the reason why the way in which we're building the back lines the way we are is by building broad partnerships. So with Clim-Eat, with also stakeholder organizations such as World Farmers Organization, to really be sure that we aren't, it's not just those legacy organizations, and to really have a nimble, open network structure that allows us to work with organizations like yours. If you want to talk after this, I'd be happy to talk about that. All right, thanks.
Okay, we have time for a question from the audience. Yes, sir. Do you want to come up to the front? Thank you. And just mention your name and affiliation. We'll have time for maybe one more question. Did somebody else have? Okay.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Aziz Salau from Nigeria. I am the...
You have to almost swallow them.
Is it better now? Okay, yeah, better. Aziz Salau from Nigeria. I am the UN Food Systems leader in Nigeria. I work directly with the national convener. And I think my question goes to everybody on the panel, including you, Ma'am. so we've actually seen as young people that there's actually a gap between the policies and also the implementation of the policies. And what we see as a gap is engagement or inclusion of young people in this not only in the implementation of the policy, but then in the composition of the policy. Because as young people, of course, we're actually very young, but then there's need for us to bring our innovative ideas to these policies to actually make it thrive, work, and make it more sustainable. So how are you working in your capacity, probably aside from climate, because I know climate do a lot of things with young people, but then how are you including young people? Because what we're actually looking at is for the purpose of sustainability. For the purpose of sustainability, can we have young people at every strata of along the agricultural value chain? Talking about young people in science, young people in production, in value addition. We actually need our leaders to actually build our capacity as young people to actually get more involved in the food systems at policies and engagement. So how are you engaging young people in different aspects? And also for young people that are in developing countries, for example like Nigeria, is there a way we can actually get to know more about what you do, apart from checking on the website or sending emails? Now we're meeting directly in a room at COP27 in Egypt. What is really going to change going forward? Because what we are looking at, for example, for me, what I'm looking at is a post-COP where we do a lot of action and implementation, and when we go for COP28 in UAE, we'll be able to deliver and say that, oh, this is what we did at COP27, these were the commitments, who is following up on the commitments, and how can young people play a role working together collectively as critical stakeholders especially in transforming food systems in everywhere, not only in Africa, not only in Nigeria, but worldwide. Thank you.
Wonderful question. And I can certainly kick off and be happy to from the perspective of the World Food Prize Foundation. So every year we award a $250,000 prize to an advanced researcher advanced in their career that have worked for decades to address food and agriculture issues. It's considered the Nobel Prize for Agriculture. But in addition, we offer a Borlaug Field Award sponsored by Normandy Borlaug and the Rockefeller Foundation to a young scientist, someone under 40, to receive recognition and accolades for their initial early career research and the work they're doing. And what leads to that are a whole array of youth programs that we have developed that start in high school in the U.S., but also working in 17 international research institutions where we place young scientists, researchers, field workers, starting in high school through college, et cetera, and have placed probably over 300 now over the course of many years, but trying to make that link to what are the potential careers and futures for you. So one of our staff members is going to lead the Youth Forum and facilitate that this year, but you can find on worldfoodprize.org a whole array of youth programs, which I think you said beyond what's on our website. But honestly, this is the mission of so many organizations, and they have to follow through in all the levels that you're talking about. Science, policy, in the field. Our young people have a voice now. They have expertise now, and we need to be hearing and integrating them. Anybody else want to respond?
First, to respond to the question of how can the types of research and analyses we've talked about be taken up, operationalized in countries like Nigeria. And as you have sensed, my team do a lot of work on global analysis, and global analysis can, of course, seem to be quite remote, but I think one of the main ways in which it's valuable is that it provides a starting point, a starter kit, you might say, of data layers which can then be taken up in particular contexts, cut out of the globe, taken up in a particular context, and used to kickstart understanding of a system. It's usually full of deficiencies. We know all the problems with global data sets, but at least it gets you going, and it starts a conversation around what is actually going on in this place, what we know, what we don't know, what data sets might be there which are better than what we've got, which you can switch in and rapidly get going with informing decisions in a more evidence-based way. The second thing I would say specifically about young people is that everything I'm talking about here requires skills, fascinating and really fun skills, actually, I would say. We see skill shortages all over the world, and those skill shortages are going to be filled by young people, mostly because they're smarter than old people like me. So having young people getting into this type of tech and really making it work for them is I think, the answer to your question.
Manuel, quickly, and then I'm told we have to go to closing. We have to end on time.
Okay, thank you. We need a new generation of public policies, obviously with a systemic approach from nature, involving young and obviously including also a dimension of gender. For doing that, we have to recognize that digital technologies have to play a crucial role. Studies led by IICA with IDB and Microsoft would indicate that just 17% of people living in rural areas are able to take advantage of digital technologies. So it is required a huge effort in spreading connectivity, training, especially young people in digital technologies. They are going to be the leaders for the transformation of agriculture in the rural areas.
Okay, we have, if that's okay, we can take one more quick question if you have it. Come on up. Do you have to go? Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said you were okay. So, we have the wonderful benefit. Well, first of all, thank you to the panel for all of your esteemed remarks and for you all for comments coming in and some of your thoughts. I'm sure there'll be interesting follow-up. We have the benefit of having Kris Hamel with us. He is the representative for COP28 of UAE and will be head of adaptation, recovery, and humanitarian response. Kris?
Hello, can you hear me? Sure. I have to press the button and stay close to the mic. I really apologize for cutting off one more question with sort of closing formalities. We thought it was important just to say that in our thinking, our early thinking about COP28, food systems and applied research as it relates to innovation is sort of front and center in our thinking. So it was important for us to deliver a message that there will be a clear through line from all the work that was done to get food on the agenda here at COP27 and to make sure that that then moves into food systems in the broader sense for COP28. Again, it's early days to talk specifics about